She mocked my job and humiliated me in front of her bosses. But when I quietly removed my ring and walked away, she never expected that would be the moment her entire life started to fall apart. The night that changed everything wasn't loud. It wasn't full of shouting, broken plates, or tears, just quiet forks on porcelain and the heavy silence of realization. It was a Sunday dinner at her parents' house, a family tradition, as she liked to call it. I'd been there dozens of times before. Her mom adored me, her dad respected me, and even her younger brother, a kid who once thought I was too boring, had warmed up to me. I'd spent the day helping her mom set the table and bringing a bottle of her father's favorite wine. It was supposed to be a normal, pleasant evening, one of those nights where everyone tells stories, laughs about old times, and the future feels warm and certain. But that night, she changed everything with a single sentence. It started small. Her father asked about the wedding plans, the guest list, the budget, the photographer. Then her mom mentioned how excited she was to finally see us walk down the aisle. I remember glancing at my fiancée, Emma, smiling, thinking how lucky I was. Then her phone buzzed on the table. The name lit up the screen. Ethan's speech balloon. I'd seen that name before. Her ex. She had told me, "We're just friends, don't worry." And while I had my doubts, I trusted her. Until that moment. Her mom joked lightly. "Oh, is that the Ethan? The one you dated before college?" Emma smiled, too easily, too confidently. "Yeah," she said. "He's been checking in about the wedding. He's happy for me." Her dad raised an eyebrow. "Why is he so involved, though?" Then it happened. Emma shrugged, put her fork down, and said in that calm, matter-of-fact tone she used whenever she wanted to look like she was in control. "Because Ethan will always be part of my life. If you don't like that, don't marry me." The table went silent. Her mom froze mid-bite. Her dad looked at her like she'd just cursed at the Pope. And I just stared at her. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and looked at me like she'd just said something empowering. Like she was testing me, waiting for me to fight for her, to say something dramatic. But all I said was, "Okay." That was it. Just that one word. Her smile faltered. "Okay," she repeated, as if she didn't hear me right. "Yeah," I said quietly, wiping my mouth with the napkin. "If that's how you feel, then okay." She laughed nervously. "Wait, you're not actually." But I was already standing. I looked at her parents, both still stunned, and said, "Thank you for dinner. It was wonderful as always." Then I walked out. I didn't make a scene. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even look back. When I got in my car, my hands were shaking. Not from anger, from clarity. For the first time in months, I saw exactly what my relationship had become. Every red flag I'd ignored. The "he's just a friend" texts, the last-minute cancellations when something came up, the way she talked about him with a wistful little smile. All of it made sense now. She wasn't testing me that night. She was declaring who she really was and what place I held in her life. That night, I packed her things. Every photo, every sweater she'd left in my closet, every memory that still smelled like her perfume. I folded them neatly into boxes and labeled them with her name. When she called, I didn't answer. When she texted, "We need to talk." Then, "Are you serious right now?" And finally, "Don't be dramatic. I just meant he'll always be a friend." I didn't respond to any of them. By Monday morning, I called the wedding planner and canceled everything. The venue, the catering, the photographer. I told them to send any deposits to her. I wasn't asking for a refund. I just wanted out. Tuesday, I called my parents. My mother was quiet for a long time after I told her. Then she simply said, "You did the right thing." Wednesday, her father showed up at my apartment. He wasn't angry, just sad. He said, "I don't know what's gotten into her. She keeps saying you overreacted." I just shook my head. "No," I told him. I finally reacted. He looked at me like he wanted to say something else, maybe even thank me, but he didn't. He just sighed and left. By the end of the week, the invitations were officially canceled. The florist confirmed. The ring sat in its box on my kitchen counter. Emma showed up 2 days later, in tears. She looked exhausted, mascara smeared, voice cracking. "I didn't mean it like that," she whispered. "You're overreacting." I stared at her. For the first time, I didn't see the woman I wanted to marry. I saw the woman who'd humiliated me, who'd looked me in the eyes in front of her family and told me another man would always come first. So I just said, quietly, "No, Emma, you meant exactly what you said." After that night, Silence became my closest companion. I didn't block Emma. I didn't post anything online. I just disappeared from her world. No anger, no revenge, just peace. And for her, that was the most painful thing I could have done. The following week, she called again. Then again. Then again. First, it was guilt. Then panic. Then anger. The text shifted tone fast. Please, just talk to me. I made a mistake. You're acting like a child. You can't just throw away everything because of one comment. Every message felt like watching her dig herself deeper, trying to rewrite what happened. But the truth was simple. She meant every word that night. I just finally decided to believe her. The night after she came to my apartment, she called me again. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail. Her voice cracked halfway through. You're the only one who ever made me feel safe, and I threw it away because I wanted to sound strong, I guess. Please, don't give up on me yet. For a split second, I almost did feel something. Not pity, not love, just the ghost of what used to be. But then I remembered the way she'd laughed that night at the dinner table, thinking her words were brave. I turned my phone over and went to bed. 2 days later, I went into work early, just to clear my head. My coworker, Marcus, noticed I wasn't myself. He was the kind of guy who didn't pry. But that morning, he handed me a coffee and said, "You look like someone who just dodged a bullet." I laughed for the first time in a week. That was the moment I realized I really had dodged a bullet. Because for months, I'd been walking on eggshells, trying to keep her happy. I'd changed the way I spoke, the way I dressed, even the way I spent my weekends, all to fit into the version of life she wanted. And that night at the dinner table, that was her final test, to see if I'd stay no matter what. I didn't. 3 days later, I heard from her best friend, Clara. She texted, "I'm sorry for what happened. She's losing it right now." Apparently, Emma had been calling Ethan, the same ex she claimed would always be part of her life. He wasn't interested. He'd gotten engaged 6 months ago and told her to stop calling. When Clara told me that, I just sat there in my car, quietly letting it sink in. The irony was poetic. She wanted to keep him as a safety net, and now she was the one clinging to nothing. That same day, my mom called to check on me. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "you sound lighter. Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said honestly. "For the first time in a while, I am." That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to my old guitar shop. I used to play before Emma convinced me it was a waste of time. The shopkeeper, an old man named Sam, smiled when he saw me. "Thought you'd quit music," he said. "Almost did," I replied. I picked up a used acoustic and played for 20 minutes. It wasn't about the music. It was about remembering who I was before her. The version of me that wasn't constantly apologizing for existing. By the weekend, word about the canceled wedding had spread. People I hadn't heard from in years reached out, some out of curiosity, others out of genuine support. Emma's side of the story, she told everyone I overreacted, that I wasn't emotionally mature enough to handle a confident woman. But confidence isn't the same thing as cruelty. And people started realizing that. Her own brother, who'd always been closer to me than to her, texted me one night. "For what it's worth, man, you did the right thing. She's been treating everyone like crap lately. I think she's finally realizing she pushed too far." It was strange, comforting, but also sad. Because I didn't want revenge. I didn't want her to suffer. I just wanted peace. A week after everything ended, I was out at a cafe, reading and sipping coffee. That's when I saw her again. She walked in, same place we'd used to go every Saturday morning. Her eyes widened when she saw me. I could tell she hadn't slept. Her hair was messy, her posture small, not the confident woman who declared her ex would always be part of her life. She came over. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I nodded, mostly out of politeness. She sat across from me, hands trembling. "You didn't even fight for us," she said. "Why would I?" I asked. "You already told me where I stand." Tears welled up in her eyes. It was a joke, a stupid way to sound in control. "No," I said calmly. "It was honest. You just didn't like the consequences." She looked down. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. Then she whispered, "You really canceled everything, didn't you?" I nodded. "I even sent back the deposits." She closed her eyes, like the words physically hurt. "Do you still love me?" I stared at her for a long time. Then I told her the truth. "I love who I thought you were." That was the last time we spoke. The following Monday, I booked a solo trip. Nothing fancy, just a week by the coast. I needed air. I needed distance. The first morning there, I woke up early, sat on the sand with my coffee, and watched the sunrise. For the first time in years, there was no anxiety buzzing in the back of my mind. No second guessing, no emotional games. Just quiet. A group of strangers nearby were laughing, someone had a guitar, and a little kid was building a sandcastle that would probably wash away in an hour, and somehow, it all felt perfect. Because life, I realized, wasn't about holding on to people who made you feel small. It was about finding peace in the absence they left behind. Update 1.it had been 2 months since the canceled wedding. Life had settled into something new, quieter, simpler, and strangely beautiful. My apartment felt lighter now, as if the walls had exhaled all the tension they'd been holding in. There were no more sharp sighs from across the room, no silent treatments, no guilt disguised as love. Just silence. And for the first time in my adult life, that silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like healing. I'd picked up hobbies again, started running in the mornings, cooked meals for myself instead of eating out or waiting for approval on what to make. Even started seeing a therapist, not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to carry old patterns into my future relationships. My therapist said something that stuck with me. You can't fix someone who thinks they're flawless. You can only stop setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. That one sentence made everything click. Because that's exactly what I'd been doing, burning myself down, piece by piece, just to keep her comfortable. Then, one night in late April, my phone buzzed at midnight. It was her name, Emma. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even curious. But part of me, that soft, nostalgic part that still remembered the girl I fell in love with, hesitated before letting the call go to voicemail. Seconds later, a voice message came through. Her voice was trembling. I don't even know where to start. You were right. About everything. I thought I needed freedom, but what I needed was someone who actually gave a damn about me. And I threw him away. I keep replaying that night over and over. You just sat there so calm while I ruined everything. I thought I'd feel powerful, but I've never felt smaller. I miss you, and I don't deserve another chance, but I needed you to know I'm sorry. I sat there, in the dim light of my living room, listening to that message 3 times over. It didn't make me angry. It didn't make me hopeful. It just made me sad. Because if she had realized all of that then, maybe things could have been different. But the person she was that night wasn't ready to love me. She was too busy loving the idea of being desired by everyone else. The next morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was the ring, the engagement ring I'd bought her. She'd mailed it back. No note, no words. Just the ring. It should have felt like closure, but it didn't. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you decide to take for yourself. So that weekend, I drove 3 hours to the mountains, a spot we'd always talked about visiting but never did. She always said it was too quiet, too boring. I parked near a small overlook and hiked up the trail. At the top, the air was cold and thin, the world stretching endlessly in every direction. I pulled the ring out of my pocket, turned it over in my hand one last time, and smiled. Then I dropped it off the cliff and watched it disappear into the trees below. It wasn't anger or revenge. It was just release. When I got back home, I checked my messages, 3 new ones from Emma. Please tell me you got the ring. I really want to meet. Just one coffee. I heard you're seeing someone. Is that true? I didn't answer. Because by then, something had shifted. I'd started talking to someone, a woman I met at the community center where I volunteered on weekends. Her name was Maya. She was kind, grounded, and funny in that way that didn't need to put others down to feel good about herself. She knew my story, not every painful detail, but enough. And she never tried to fix it or compete with it. One evening, while we were sitting on a park bench watching the sun go down, she said, "You strike me as someone who's been loved for what you could provide, not who you are." It hit harder than I expected, because it was true. With Emma, love had always felt conditional, tied to success, effort, image. But with Maya, it was quiet and consistent, like warmth you didn't have to earn. That was the moment I realized I was finally free. 2 weeks later, I ran into Emma by accident at a cafe downtown. She looked different, not just physically, but in the way life had started to humble her. Her clothes were wrinkled, her expression tired. She froze when she saw me. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied. "You look good." "Thanks." "You too." Awkward silence hung between us, filled only by the sound of clinking mugs and faint music overhead. Then she blurted out, "I didn't mean what I said that night." "I know," I said gently, "but you still said it." She winced, her eyes glistening. I just, I wanted you to fight for me, to show me that I mattered more than my pride." "I did," I said quietly. "For years." That was it. No yelling, no bitterness, just truth. She nodded, trying to smile, but her lip trembled. "I hope you're happy," she whispered. "I am," I said, and this time I meant it. That night, as I drove home, I thought about everything. The dinner, the silence, the apology, the ring, the closure. Sometimes love doesn't end in an explosion. Sometimes it ends in a quiet, tired sigh when you finally accept that what's broken can't be fixed, and that maybe it's not meant to be. Emma had wanted freedom, and she got it. I wanted peace, and I finally found it. The best part? I didn't need anyone else's permission to keep it. Final update. 2 years. It's strange how much can change in what feels like the blink of an eye. The man I was at that dinner, sitting across from the woman who mocked me in front of everyone, doesn't exist anymore. He was patient, too forgiving, desperate to prove his worth. The man writing this now doesn't chase approval anymore. He just lives, peacefully, simply, and honestly. After that last encounter with Emma, I never saw her again. No angry texts, no emotional calls, just silence, and I was grateful for it. In that silence, I built a life. I'd moved to a new city for work, taken a role I'd once been too afraid to apply for. Turns out, I was more capable than I'd let myself believe. Within a year, I'd been promoted, not because I fought for attention, but because I finally started believing I was worth it. Maya was still in my life, too. We'd gone from two people quietly helping each other heal to something far more beautiful, steady, mutual love. She'd never been loud or demanding. She didn't need attention to validate her worth. She just showed up, consistently, gently. One morning, while we were having coffee on our tiny balcony, she laughed at something I said and called me the calmest storm she'd ever met. It stuck with me, because that's exactly what I'd become, calm on the outside, strong within. Then, one evening in late October, I got an Instagram notification. A name I hadn't seen in 2 years had liked one of my posts. Emma. The post wasn't anything dramatic, just a photo of me and Maya at a charity event, laughing with friends. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on her profile. It looked different. Gone were the endless selfies and polished captions about self-love and living unapologetically. Instead, there were sporadic posts, most of them old travel pictures, recycled quotes about mistakes and lessons. And then, in her bio, one small line stood out. Learning to be the person I used to expect others to be. For the first time in a long time, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not bitterness, just empathy. Because I knew that version of her was finally facing the same quiet realizations I once did. That night, she messaged me. "Emma, hey, I saw your post. You look happy." "I'm glad." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Me? Thanks. I am." She read it instantly. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. Then came her next message. "Emma, you probably don't want to hear this, but I owe you an apology. Again, not that I miss you kind. The real kind. You didn't deserve what I did, any of it. I was selfish, insecure, and cruel. I thought humiliating you would make me feel powerful, but all it did was show everyone how small I really was." My chest felt tight reading that. Not out of sadness, but from the weight of memories that used to feel heavier than they do now. Me. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Emma, you're not mad. Me, no. I was once. But that version of me, the one who needed your apology, doesn't exist anymore. There was a long pause before her final message came through. "Emma, you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I didn't know it until I lost you." I didn't reply, not out of cruelty, but because some stories don't need a final word. Some stories just end when peace begins. That weekend, I took Maya to visit my family. My mom hugged her like she'd known her forever, and my dad pulled me aside and said, "You look lighter, son. Happier. Like you finally put down a weight you were never meant to carry." He was right. That weight wasn't Emma. It was the version of myself who thought love had to be earned through suffering. Over dinner, Maya squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "You know, I'm grateful for whoever hurt you before me." I laughed. That's a strange thing to say. She smiled. If she hadn't broken you, I'd never have met the man who learned how to build himself back better. And for the first time in a long, long while, I realized I wasn't just healed, I was grateful. Not for the pain, but for what it taught me. A few months later, I got an email from a mutual friend of Emma's. Apparently, she'd moved to another state, started working for a nonprofit, and was in therapy. She'd even told people that what happened between us was her biggest life lesson. When I read that, I didn't smile out of pride. I smiled because it confirmed something I'd learned the hard way. Sometimes your absence teaches people what your presence never could. Now, 2 years later, as I write this, Maya and I are engaged. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. No dramatic posts, no grand declarations, just quiet, steady love. We both know what we want, and more importantly, what we won't tolerate again. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that dinner, about the laughter, the humiliation, the way my chest had burned with shame. And then I think about the man who sat there, calm, removing his ring without a word, while everyone went silent. That was the moment everything changed. That was the first act of self-respect I'd shown in years. Because love isn't about enduring pain for someone else's comfort. It's about knowing when to stop being the punchline in your own story. I'll end with this. When someone mocks what makes you honest, hardworking, or kind, they're not showing you your weakness, they're revealing theirs. The night she humiliated me, I thought I'd lost everything. But what I really lost was someone who didn't deserve to stand beside me in the life I was meant to build. And as it turns out, that was the best loss I ever had.